Well, here we are back again, and in this video we're just going to go through a number of different ways that you can record bills to your suppliers. So I'm going to use the demo file for this rather than the Fatima's because it's got a little bit more pre-populated information. So as you can see, I'm on the dashboard. We have our business bank account. We actually have a couple of other items on this dashboard, bills we need to pay, invoices we owed. So this is our accounts receivable and our accounts payable. In this one we've also got an account watch list, just all different things we can put on here. So the first thing I want to show you is how to just put in a new bill where there is no existing purchase order. And a number of ways we can do that. We can either click on this plus sign up here on the right and go new bill, or we can go over to the left to the business menu, scroll down to purchases overview, and then we get this whole overview of if there are already any bills that we're expecting to pay, if we've got any purchase orders. So if you are unsure, this is possibly the way you'd go. Otherwise we'd take that shortcut way, but remembering it brings us into the same screen. So I'm going to click on the drop down here and say I want to do a new bill, and I'm going to create a bill to someone who's not in the system. So I'm pretty sure this person won't be Joe Blogs. If they're not in there, create them as a new contact. I know we've talked about the credit terms. I'll talk about that in a minute. Do the date of the invoice or the date that you're entering this into the system, and then the due date. So even though we haven't set credit terms yet, by putting the due date in, that will give us the information that we need to create an aged payables report. So let's suggest that that's at the end of the month. As in the notes, make sure you put a reference in, because if you don't, if we go to pay this through the system, when we do a batch payment, Xero will actually throw up an error and say it wants to see a reference there. It's always a good idea to put the supplier's invoice number, because if you leave that as the reference when we upload a bank file, it makes it easier for them to track. So let's just go BB123. We don't need to pop the total in here because that'll come up as we populate these lines down here. Generally speaking, we've been going with tax inclusive as the amount, so I'll leave it there, Australian dollars. Let's just pick up some items because we will have some in here. If we select an item, a description will go in. Let's just say we're doing, one of these for $500. We're doing or paying for some development work, so it's some type of expense. Let's drop down and see. We can just allocate that to consulting, GST on expenses. We're not tracking anything by regions because it's inclusive. Total amount is 500, subtotal 500, which includes GST of 45.45. If this were exclusive and I put 500 in there, it would add 10% GST, $50, and make it $550. So just being conscious of that. I'm going back to GST inclusive, and for the purpose of the exercise, I'll just approve this invoice. Now I've put a due date in there, so that would fix up the aged payables, but we could come across into contacts if we wanted to. Because I've created a bill, Xero knows that this Joe Blogs is a supplier, so I could click on the supplier list. I could scroll down and find Joe Blogs, click on Joe Blogs, and I could edit Joe Blogs and then start to pop in a credit terms if I wanted to put specific credit terms for Joe Blogs. If it was a one-off invoice, you wouldn't bother doing it. If it was a new customer and you thought a new supplier, and you thought you were going to do lots of future bills, we might pop in our default settings. So we could quickly do that and go, it's always going to be tax inclusive. We're always going to allocate it to the consulting account. Don't have the EMB, the ABN. The default GST for purchases is always going to be GST on expenses. And we could say, because it's bills, we said the 30th, so we're just going to say 30th of the current month. So every time we generate a bill, it's going to be on the 30th. Tend not to put the 31st because not every month has the 31st, and this will obviously catch us out in Feb, and then we could save that. So that's just doing a brand new bill where there's no purchase order. Where there is a purchase order, there's two different ways we can do that. So as before, come up to business, purchases overview. We know we have some purchase orders. We click on the approved ones down here, and we could then have a look at our list and say, oh yes, we know that purchase order 002 has been filled, so I want to convert that into a bill. Tick it. Don't fall for the trap of just clicking build. That doesn't actually generate a bill. It just tells the system that it's been billed. It doesn't actually create a bill to the supplier, that we've received from the supplier. We need to go through that process of generating a bill in the system. So we want to click on this one here, copy to. We want to copy it to a bill, because remember, purchase orders give rise to a bill from our supplier. We want that bill in the system. Yes, we want to mark it as fully billed. Now, if this was a purchase order and we were ordering 100 of something and we only got 50, we would untick that. We would still generate a bill, and then we would come back and select the same purchase order when the remaining 50 items come in. For now, let's just assume that everything has been billed, and we go create a draft bill. You can see purchase order 2 has gone here because we've ticked it to say we're billing it and we're creating a full bill. But I want to see that draft bill that I've created, so make sure you click up here and go view item. Here's the bill created from that purchase order. It was on the 2nd of March. Let's just make the due date the end of the month again, just for simplicity's sake. It's going to accept all the defaults that were in the system, so I'm actually going to leave those in here for now. The key thing to do when you're doing something from a purchase order, part of our internal controls, remembering we'd have an actual bill from a supplier that we could be checking against, is making sure that the bill that we've received is for the correct quantity and is still reflecting these amounts that we put in the system when we did the purchase order. If the amounts were different, we could just click on there and change it. So if the price had gone up to $4, we could change that. If the price had stayed, then we would just leave it as is. And then once it's done, again, for the purpose of the exercise, I'm going to click approve. 2 errors because I've changed the amount. So what we need to do is up here, that's now $4.90. Didn't update that, and it's telling me an account must be valid because for the delivery charge I actually haven't allocated an account. So I'm hoping we've got a freight charge in here. There we go, and that should now allow me to approve it. Beautiful. That's the second way to record a bill from this time from a purchase order. The next way is I'm just going to go to I'm just going to go to new bills using the original way, the shortcut, new bill, and I'm going to do a bill for Dimples. And then all of a sudden the system pops up and it says to me, but hang on, you've got 2 purchase orders. So this is perhaps if you're creating a bill, you're not sure if there's a purchase order, you haven't gone through the purchase order view, the system will actually remind us, hey guys, you've got a purchase order. Do you want to use those? So then you go, oh, I better check, view the list, and say, oh, okay, this invoice I've got, the invoice will have, okay, that it's fulfilling purchase order 3 or purchase order 4. I'm just going to go in order. Oh, okay, it's filling that. And then we just go through the same process. Copy to a bill, create a draft. Now, what I'm going to do this time is if I forget to then go and view the item because I've got sidetracked, someone's come and chatted to me and I've gone off this screen, and let's just assume I've done that. Then if I come into business and purchases overview, then that bill that I've just created will be in the drafts anyway. Today's date, there's the first one I created, and then the second one. So then we could just go in there and go, sorry, the first one wasn't a draft, that's in the awaiting payment one, the one I just created, purchase order 3. There he is, that's the one I've created. So remembering to go through and check everything first. You're happy with everything that's on there. Yes, everything's arrived. And approve. So there's a number of different ways. They all end up obviously at the same place, all using the same screens, just a different process to get to that same place. Sorry, didn't put the due date in. Good reminder. Xero will tell us to put in a due date. That enables us, even if we don't have credit terms in there, to actually create our aged payables report. And there we're done, creating bills through Xero. So once you've had a bit of a play with that, go along and enter in your Fatima's bills as per the list that you provided. So that's it for now.